Introducing the ultimate voiceover tool for professionals and amateurs, a powerful and easy-to-use software that lets you easily create high-quality voiceovers. After the death of his parents, Bolívar and his siblings were placed under the care of various relatives and guardians. His upbringing was heavily influenced by his uncles and tutors, who exposed him to Enlightenment ideals and a broad education. Bolívar showed an early interest in reading, especially works on philosophy, politics, and history, which later shaped his revolutionary ideas. His most influential tutor was Simón Rodríguez, an educator with progressive ideas who became a father figure to Bolívar. Rodríguez instilled in him a love for learning and a sense of social justice, introducing him to the writings of thinkers like Rousseau, Voltaire, and Montesquieu. Bolívar's early life was thus a mix of privilege, intellectual stimulation, and personal loss, setting the stage for his later role as a leader in the struggle for South American independence. Between 1796 and 1806, Simón Bolívar's life was marked by significant personal, educational, and ideological development. In 1796, Bolívar was a young teenager living in Spain, where he was sent to complete his education and immerse himself in European culture. During this period, he traveled extensively, visiting major cities like Madrid, Paris, and Rome. These travels exposed him to the political and social ideas that were sweeping Europe, particularly the Enlightenment ideals of liberty, equality, and republicanism, which deeply influenced his thinking. In 1802, Bolívar married María Teresa Rodríguez del Toro y Aleza, a young Spanish noblewoman, and the couple returned to Venezuela. However, their happiness was short-lived, as María Teresa died of yellow fever less than a year after their marriage. Bolívar was devastated by her death, which profoundly affected him and may have strengthened his resolve to pursue a life dedicated to larger causes rather than personal happiness. Following his wife's death, Bolívar returned to Europe, where he continued his education and was drawn further into the revolutionary ideas of the time. In 1804, while in Paris, Bolívar witnessed Napoleon Bonaparte's coronation as Emperor of France. This event had a profound impact on him, highlighting both the possibilities and the dangers of power. During this time, Bolívar met up with his old tutor, Simón Rodríguez, who inspired him to dedicate his life to the cause of South American independence. In 1805, Bolívar made a symbolic vow on Monte Sacro in Rome, pledging never to rest until South America was free from Spanish rule. This oath marked a turning point in his life, as he became increasingly committed to the liberation of his homeland. By 1806, Bolívar began to actively participate in the planning and organizing of independence movements, setting the stage for his later military campaigns and leadership in the struggle against Spanish colonial rule. Simón Bolívar played a central role in the Creole Revolution, which was part of the broader Latin American wars of independence against Spanish rule. The Creole Revolution was driven by the Creole elites, descendants of Spanish settlers born in the Americas, who sought to gain political and economic independence from the Spanish crown. Bolívar, a member of this elite class, became one of the revolution's most prominent and influential leaders. Bolívar's involvement in the Creole Revolution began in earnest around 1810, when political turmoil in Spain due to Napoleon's invasion provided an opportunity for Latin American colonies to challenge Spanish authority. He quickly became a key figure in the movement for Venezuelan independence, advocating for the expulsion of Spanish forces and the establishment of a republic. Bolívar's early efforts included diplomatic missions to garner support for the revolutionary cause and his participation in various military campaigns aimed at securing independence. After initial setbacks, including the fall of the First Venezuelan Republic in 1812, Bolívar regrouped and continued his efforts, delivering his famous Cartagena Manifesto in 1812, which outlined his vision for the liberation of Venezuela and criticized the failings of the early independence efforts. He then launched the admirable campaign in 1813, successfully liberating parts of Venezuela and briefly restoring independence. Bolívar's leadership, charisma, and strategic acumen helped galvanize support among the Creoles, mestizos, and indigenous people, turning the revolution into a broader struggle for social and political change. He articulated a vision of a united, independent Latin America free from colonial rule, which resonated deeply with many. Despite facing numerous challenges, including internal divisions and Spanish counterattacks, Bolívar's unwavering commitment to independence became a driving force in the Creole Revolution, ultimately leading to the liberation of multiple countries in South America. Between 1808 and 1815, Simón Bolívar's life was a period of intense revolutionary activity marked by both triumphs and severe setbacks. In 1808, political instability in Spain following Napoleon's invasion created an opening for independence movements in Latin America. Bolívar, inspired by Enlightenment ideas and fueled by his vow to liberate his homeland, became actively involved in the struggle for independence. In 1810, Bolívar was part of a revolutionary junta that deposed the Spanish governor in Caracas, marking the beginning of the Venezuelan War of Independence. He was sent on a diplomatic mission to London to seek British support, where he met with Francisco de Miranda, a veteran revolutionary leader. Bolívar persuaded Miranda to return to Venezuela, where he later played a significant role in the independence movement. The First Venezuelan Republic was established in 1811, but it was short-lived. Internal divisions, resistance from royalist forces, and a devastating earthquake in 1812 led to the republic's collapse. Bolívar and Miranda clashed over the surrender terms, and Bolívar was forced to flee to Cartagena, New Granada, modern-day Colombia, where he wrote the Cartagena Manifesto, criticizing the failures of the initial independence efforts and calling for renewed resistance movement. He was hailed as El Libertador, the Liberator, and proclaimed the Second Venezuelan Republic. However, the republic faced constant challenges from royalist forces and internal dissent. By 1814, a brutal civil war had erupted between independence supporters and royalists, leading to the republic's collapse once again. Facing defeat, Bolívar retreated to New Granada, where he continued his fight for independence. In 1815, he wrote the Letter from Jamaica, a visionary document in which he outlined his hopes for a united, independent Latin America and analyzed the causes of the revolution's failures. Despite the losses and hardships, Bolívar's determination never wavered. This period was crucial in shaping his strategies and solidifying his role as the key leader of the independence movement in South America. Between 1815 and 1825, Simón Bolívar's life was defined by relentless military campaigns, visionary leadership, and the realization of his dream of independence for much of South America. After facing significant setbacks in Venezuela, Bolívar sought refuge in Jamaica in 1815, where he wrote his famous Letter from Jamaica, outlining his vision for a united and independent Latin America. Despite his exile, Bolívar remained committed to the revolutionary cause, seeking support from various international allies, including Haiti, which provided crucial assistance. In 1816, Bolívar returned to the mainland, landing in Venezuela with a small force supported by Haitian supplies and soldiers. He continued to face resistance from Spanish forces, but through persistent guerrilla tactics and strategic alliances, Bolívar gradually regained momentum. By 1817, he had established control over key areas in eastern Venezuela and set up a provisional government. Bolívar's leadership skills and ability to inspire loyalty were instrumental in keeping the independence movement alive during these challenging times. The turning point came in 1819 with the daring crossing of the Andes, one of Bolívar's most celebrated military feats. Leading his troops through treacherous mountain terrain, Bolívar launched a surprise attack on Spanish forces in New Granada, modern-day Colombia, culminating in the decisive Battle of Boyaca in August 1819. This victory secured the liberation of New Granada and boosted morale across the continent. Bolívar then helped establish the Republic of Gran Colombia, encompassing present-day Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama, with himself as president. Over the next few years, Bolívar continued his campaigns, liberating Venezuela by 1821 and securing a significant victory at the Battle of Carabobo. In 1822, he met with José de San Martín, another key independence leader, in Guayaquil, Ecuador. While their meeting's details remain largely unknown, it was clear that Bolívar's vision of a united northern South America was gaining ground. By 1824, Bolívar's forces had liberated Peru, culminating in the Battle of Ayacucho, which effectively ended Spanish rule in South America. In 1825, in recognition of his contributions, the newly independent Upper Peru was renamed Bolivia in his honor. Bolívar's dream of a liberated and united South America was partly realized during this period, though he faced ongoing challenges of governance, regional divisions, and the difficulty of maintaining unity among the newly independent states. Between 1825 and 1830, Simón Bolívar's life was marked by political struggles, efforts to unify the newly independent nations, and personal disillusionment. After achieving significant military victories and liberating much of South America, Bolívar turned his focus to governing the vast territories under his influence. In 1825, the new nation of Bolivia was created and named in his honor, and Bolívar was invited to draft its constitution, which reflected his vision of a strong central government with a lifetime presidency to ensure stability. However, Bolívar's vision of a united Gran Colombia, a federation including modern-day Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Panama, began to unravel due to deep-seated regional differences, political rivalries, and rising nationalism. As president of Gran Colombia, Bolívar faced constant challenges, including economic difficulties, political infighting, and rebellions against his authority. His attempts to maintain unity through a centralized government and his proposal for a lifetime presidency met with resistance, as many feared Bolívar was becoming dictatorial. In 1826, Bolívar called for the Congress of Panama, an ambitious attempt to unify Latin American nations in a grand confederation. However, the Congress failed to achieve significant results, and Bolívar's hopes for regional unity began to fade. The political situation in Gran Colombia grew increasingly unstable, with rising tensions and conflicts among the regions. In 1828, Bolívar declared himself dictator in an effort to prevent the complete disintegration of the republic, but his authority was constantly challenged. In September 1828, Bolívar survived an assassination attempt, reflecting the intense opposition he faced. Despite his efforts, Gran Colombia continued to fragment, with Venezuela and Ecuador declaring their independence from the Federation by 1830. Bolívar, disillusioned and suffering from declining health, resigned from the presidency in early 1830. He planned to retire to Europe, but his dream of a united South America had crumbled, and he found himself increasingly isolated and powerless. Bolívar spent his final months in Santa Marta, Colombia, where he died on December 17, 1830, from tuberculosis. Disheartened by the disintegration of his life's work, Bolívar's last days were filled with regret and frustration over the political divisions that had undone much of what he had fought for. Despite his personal disappointments, Bolívar's legacy as El Libertador and his contributions to the independence of Latin America endured, securing his place as one of the most influential figures in the region's history. According to Simón Bolívar, society is fundamentally a collective body formed by individuals bound together by a common interest, culture, and shared aspirations for freedom and justice. Bolívar believed that society should be organized around principles of equality, liberty, and the rule of law, where the government's role is to safeguard the rights and freedoms of its citizens. He viewed society as inherently dynamic, shaped by historical context, and in need of strong but just leadership to guide it towards progress and stability. Bolívar was deeply influenced by Enlightenment thinkers and believed that a well-ordered society required both the active participation of its citizens and a government capable of maintaining order and unity. He argued that society's prosperity depended on a balance between authority and liberty, emphasizing that institutions should be designed to reflect the needs and values of the people. For Bolívar, a successful society was one that protected its members from tyranny, promoted education, and encouraged civic virtue, ultimately creating a collective identity that transcended individual differences. Under Simón Bolívar, society and the economy in the newly independent nations of South America were marked by a mix of promise and turmoil. Socially, Bolívar's vision sought to break away from the rigid colonial caste system that had dominated under Spanish rule. However, society remained deeply stratified, with significant divisions between the Creole elites, who largely held power, and the broader populations of mestizos, indigenous people, and formerly enslaved Africans. Bolívar advocated for a more inclusive society where merit rather than birth determined one's status, but deeply entrenched social hierarchies and racial prejudices were slow to change. Economically, the post-independence period was challenging. The wars of independence had devastated much of the region's infrastructure, agriculture, and trade networks. Under Bolívar's leadership, the economy struggled to recover from the prolonged conflict. Many of the old colonial trade patterns were disrupted, and new economic policies were difficult to implement amid ongoing political instability. The economy was still primarily agrarian, with large estates controlled by the elite, and there was little industrial development. Bolívar attempted reforms, such as redistributing land and modernizing the economy, but his efforts often faced resistance from the landowning classes and other vested interests. Additionally, the newly independent states were burdened with war debts, and their economies were vulnerable to external pressures, such as fluctuating commodity prices and dependence on European markets. The economic challenges contributed to social unrest, as many people, especially the lower classes, did not experience immediate benefits from independence. Overall, society and the economy under Bolívar were in a state of transition, struggling to define new identities and establish stable governance while facing the lingering legacies of colonial rule. Despite Bolívar's ideals of creating a more just and prosperous society, the realities of social inequality, economic hardship, and political fragmentation often undermined his broader vision. The cult of Bolívar refers to the reverence and almost mythic status that Simón Bolívar attained in Latin America, particularly in Venezuela and other countries he helped liberate. This phenomenon began during Bolívar's lifetime but intensified after his death in 1830, as his image was elevated from that of a military and political leader to a near-sacred symbol of liberty, nationalism, and anti-colonialism. The cult of Bolívar was characterized by the glorification of his persona, often portraying him as a flawless hero, El Libertador, whose vision and sacrifices were instrumental in the struggle for independence from Spanish rule. In the years following his death, Bolívar was memorialized through statues, public ceremonies, and the naming of cities, states, and even a country, Bolivia, in his honor. This cult of personality served to unite the fragmented societies of post-independence Latin America around a shared historical figure who represented ideals of freedom, unity, and sovereignty. Political leaders across the region, especially in Venezuela, used Bolívar's legacy to legitimize their authority, invoking his ideals and imagery to promote nationalist agendas and political cohesion. Over time, Bolívar's writings, speeches, and military achievements were heavily romanticized, and his complex, sometimes controversial decisions were often simplified to fit the heroic narrative. The cult became a tool for national identity building, emphasizing Bolívar's vision of a unified Latin America and his dedication to the liberation and betterment of its people. However, the cult of Bolívar has also been criticized for fostering an idealized and sometimes distorted view of his legacy, overshadowing the more nuanced aspects of his political life, including his struggles with governance and the failures of his unification projects. Despite this, the cult of Bolívar remains a powerful cultural and political force in Latin America, symbolizing enduring aspirations for freedom, justice, and regional solidarity.